Good evening. Before the dawn of recorded time, scientists believe, there existed a land bridge between the North American continent and Asia, where the Bering Sea now flows. It's across this land that Native Americans are thought to have migrated from the east. During their trek, did those early settlers intrude on the territory of a mystical creature which still inhabits thousands of square miles of forest from northern California to Canada? This beast crops up again and again in Native American mythology and has many names. Buckwas, Oma, and Sasquatch are just a few. But you and I know it as Bigfoot.
Impenetrable woodland covers vast areas of the Pacific Northwest. Sparsely populated and largely unexplored, the region is believed by many to be the habitat of the mysterious and elusive Bigfoot, for whom the forests provide the perfect sanctuary.
It's just fascinating to think that a large bipedal hominid, hair-covered ape of some sort is wandering around in these woods around us. There certainly is enough resources to support something like that.
Todd Neese is a computer manager from Portland in Oregon and a sergeant in America's National Guard. During a training exercise in the forests, Todd had just detonated some explosives when he says he noticed movement near the blast site.
There, standing in the middle, were these three figures, very dark, almost jet black in color, standing on two legs, arms to their side, quite like a human would.
It's accounts like this which maintain the interest and curiosity of Bigfoot fans like Larry Lund.
Since I was a kid, I've always been in wonderment of things that I can't prove are there, that I haven't seen. I'm an investigator. I go out to sites where there's been sightings of the creature or tracks. A lot of it, of course, is hoaxing, and you can tell, but we do get a lot of information.
The legend of Bigfoot is so compelling that over the years, it's generated a minor industry. It's also encouraged hoaxers to make outrageous claims and falsify evidence.
Here's an example of a lot of the fakes we get. As you can see, it doesn't have a real definite foot shape. And the toes are just straight across out to here and then real wide and bulbous. Now there's one toe there, and this one appears to be missing the little toe coming up.
And the hoaxers don't stop at Bigfoot's little toes.
I want you to listen to this. This is a tape that has been sent. It's supposed to be the sound of a Bigfoot. And this is what people say they're hearing.
This is not the sound of a Bigfoot. It's a fake, recorded in a church bell tower. But there's one piece of evidence that even Larry finds persuasive. In 1967, a Bigfoot enthusiast called Roger Patterson shot this remarkable piece of film in Bluff Creek, California.
It shows this creature walking away from Roger Patterson as he filmed. He runs behind it.
Patterson claims he'd filmed a female Bigfoot.
As she turned, you can really see that it is a female creature then, because she has large pendulous breasts. As she disappears, you can still see the movement of the skin. You can see the muscle tone. I'm convinced this is a real creature.
The following day, Patterson returned to Bluff Creek and took what he claims were casts of footprints made by the Bigfoot.
A somewhat normal-looking human-type foot. Toes are displayed just about right, nice angle, a nice flat heel here with no outrageous lines in it. So, since we do have the film and these were cast by people the next day, we believe these are real.
The Patterson film has always aroused controversy. Its supporters point to the fact that in 30 years, nobody has confessed to a hoax. They also claim that no one at the time would have had the skills to fake it.
Several of the movie people and their special effects have looked at this film. They said, Larry, if back then, 1967, not possible.
1,000 miles to the north lies Vancouver Island in British Columbia. It's surrounded by numerous smaller islands where dense forest extends to the shoreline. For centuries, these islands have been home to Native Americans. Village Island, now long since abandoned, was the birthplace of Tom Seaweed. For him and his tribe, the legend of Bigfoot, or Bukwus as they call the creature, is part of folklore.
My people at Bogyoth have always believed in a being that inhabits this area. Now the Bukwus is said to be a large hair-covered giant that you can see on the beaches when you're out clam digging on low tide. And many of our legends and dances are about the Bukwus.
4 years ago, Tom and a friend took a boat trip around the deserted islands off the Vancouver coast.
Just as it got dark, I started calling for wolves to see if I'd get an answer from them. To my surprise, I got a call from the beach, but it wasn't wolves. It was a whistling, whooping sort of noise. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And at the same time, a really bad smell came drifting towards my boat. We saw something move, a shadow come out of the bush. And right there, the first thing I noticed was this great creature, like a human covered in hair, just boom. I was amazed because he'd done the same posturing that I'd been taught when I used to dance the Bukwus for my grandfather.
Tom says he and his friend watched in amazement until the creature finally strode off down the beach.
Bukwus I knew about as a creature that ate cockles and clams on the beaches, was shy of humans. You know, I've grown up with the legends. I guess I had my doubts, but after that night, no doubts.
Did Tom really see a Bigfoot that night? Skeptics believe there is a simple explanation. The witnesses have been confusing Bukwus, or Sasquatch, with wild bears, common to the region. This theory is rejected by wildlife biologist Dr. John Bindernagel, who has studied hundreds of sightings.
Sasquatch differs from a bear actually in several ways, although superficially there's a similarity. If we look at a Sasquatch, just the outline, it has a much shorter neck, long legs, and in profile, a very flat face. A bear, by comparison, has a very prominent snout, has very sloping or tapered shoulders, and has very short legs. And so, again, although there is this superficial similarity, it doesn't bear any serious analysis.
One day in July 1985, the Bradshaw family from Washington State went on a camping trip deep into the woods.
We had heard that there was a sighting of Sasquatch in the North River area and decided that we were going to go out and check it out.
Yeah, we hunting as well as fishing here?
You can't be too careful.
It was a beautiful day down there, but yet there was an eeriness to it. It was just something that wasn't quite right.
Fred and his son Rick went off to the river to fish, leaving Carol behind at the campsite.
There was just total stillness. And the stillness does make you wonder, because you have a feeling when you're in the woods that there is something watching.
At dusk, Fred and Rick returned to the campsite to join Carol for dinner.
I decided, well, we'd get some sleep.
Don't stay up too late, Rick. You want to get ahead.
And then we'd get up later in the night, and then we'd go look around at night, because these creatures seem to roam more at night.
What the heck was that?
All of a sudden, there was just this big, loud, like a big limb had fallen.
Sounded like a tree came down in the middle of camp.
I don't know, maybe it's just a bear or a cougar or something.
Over there.
A weird feeling hit me, kind of the back of the spine over the top of the head. And I said, Dad, do you see what I see?
Here was this form that was standing behind a tree.
The Bradshaws claim this was no fleeting glimpse, and the creature was in their sight for several minutes before it disappeared. They're insistent it was a Bigfoot.
I saw what I saw, and I can't prove it to anyone else. You just have to have an open mind about it.
Whether Bigfoot exists or not, Larry Lund believes the phenomenon fulfills a basic human need.
I think it's the mystery of life. You need something to believe in, you know, something that you can't quite see and you can't quite touch, but that it's out there and you hope that it's there. We need our monsters.
The professor of anthropology at an American university recently called for a hunt to track and kill Bigfoot to prove its existence. If Bigfoot were found, the species' isolated life would be destroyed forever, along with a tantalizing mystery. When we indulge our superstitions, we're mostly enjoying a bit of harmless fun, reading the tarot cards or tea leaves or learning our fate in the astrology charts. The Ouija board, however, is widely believed to represent a darker and less acceptable side of the occult. Deriving its name from the French and German words for yes, oui and ja, it's mostly used by people who are trying to make contact with the dead. The Ouija board is condemned by both believers and non-believers alike because, whether or not it can bridge the gap between this world and the next, it certainly has the power to cause awful misery and suffering.
I would say to anyone who wanted to get involved with playing with the Ouija board to think twice about it. I don't believe it's getting in touch with anything genuinely spiritual and good. I think it's simply getting in touch with unhealed parts of the human unconscious and with the deep wounds within themselves, and that it's going to bring all sorts of things to the surface which they may not be able to face and which might be quite destructive.
I have done at least 3 funerals that I know of young people who've committed suicide as a direct result of playing Ouija board.
The origins of the Ouija board are numerous and varied. Different versions of the board have existed for centuries in many countries. Author Andrew Boyd is a leading authority on its history.
The modern Ouija board comes from the late 19th century when a spiritualist called Planchette devised a kind of little pointer device like a glass on casters to move around quickly around the board. And from then on, the commercial board was developed. It became extremely popular in the 1920s after the First World War when there were so many people who were bereaved wanting to contact their dead relatives.
Dr. Richard Wiseman heads a unit at the University of Hertfordshire which specializes in the paranormal and occult.
A Ouija board is allegedly an object for communicating with the deceased. I think there are lots of reasons why adults use a Ouija board. It may be just for fun. It may be that they think it would be exciting to try and contact the deceased or to, try and bring an evil spirit into the room. But what can start off as just a sort of harmless interest or just as fun can often lead to serious negative experiences for people.
There's a number of different ways in which the board can work. You could get together with a group of people and somebody mischievous in that group could be shoving the glass around them. It could be involuntary movement, or it could be that the board is powered by our unconscious. The last possible theory of this is it could actually be powered by what people may believe it's powered by, some kind of spiritual force. One of the clearest cases of somebody who was disturbed as a result of using the Ouija board was a 17-year-old girl who'd seen the videos and read the books and decided to have a go for herself. She was perfectly normal and perfectly healthy until she had a makeshift seance in her home. Something happened in that seance, we don't know what it was, but it was bad enough to disturb her to the extent that she ran out of the house and was found sitting in the street, completely distressed. Her parents didn't know what to do with her, so they called for help. Meanwhile, the girl ran upstairs, turned up her hi-fi as loud as she possibly could, and just wrecked her room. All they could hear downstairs was the drum of this music and things being smashed around her room. Now, she had been perfectly normal, perfectly healthy before staging this seance. And in the end, she would have been sectioned. They would have put her in a psychiatric hospital there and then for her own good, but the doctor had already gone home.
I have been involved with the Deliverance Ministry for about 20 years, and in my experience, it's about 6 to 9 months on an average dealing with cases of Ouija board before the dynamics within the family are sorted out.
This woman's teenage daughter changed almost overnight after using a Ouija board for the first time.
She hasn't been back to school for 5 weeks before the holidays because I couldn't get her to wake up in the mornings. I'd wake her up and she'd just swear, roll over and go back to sleep again. So I can't get her to get up at all. Schoolwork she's not been doing any at all, as far as I know, because She won't let me look at her books, which is something she used to let me do, and she won't let me do that now. She doesn't write any stories like she used to. She doesn't paint. She doesn't come downstairs and talk to us like she used to.
I think at the very least it's bringing material from the unconscious to the surface, spiritual material inside themselves which they can't cope with. I remember on one occasion having a group of lorry drivers who asked to come and see me. They had to stop on motorways to rest, and to pass the time they'd been playing with a Ouija board.
Ah, come on, who's pushing it?
Well, it's not me, I'm telling you.
Hey, look, Gavin, your finger's white, I can see it.
Yeah, like, look, I'll tip my
You're
finger up,
pushing
right?
it.
No, look, I'm going to tip it up. There's no way I can be doing that.
Now, come on, this is a why-no. Stop.
I'll tell you what we do. We'll ask it a question.
Yeah, go on then.
Okay.
When did my dad die?
I think the truckers were just bored and wanted to pass some time, so I think they just decided this was a bit of fun, and then became very frightened when they began to realise that the glass was moving, was spelling out messages of things from their past.
I don't like this.
I'd like to stop now.
They felt that some power was taking over the Ouija board and was also taking over their lives. So two of them, for instance, described how they believed that some power of evil was getting into their cabs with them and was trying to force them off the road.
Two of the drivers had an uncontrollable urge to steer into the path of oncoming traffic. They all became so distressed, they decided to seek professional help.
They came to me in a quite terrified state. They obviously found it deeply distressing, and yet they were quite tough men. But they certainly had been frightened out of their lives by that experience.
There are many more cases of adults who got more than they bargained for following a Ouija board session. Stephen Gilchrist was the solicitor defending Stephen Young, who was accused of a gruesome double murder. Insurance consultant Young had been charged with the cold-blooded execution of newlyweds Harry and Nicola Fuller to get cash for an ailing business.
It was clearly an extremely unpleasant case for the jurors because it contained elements of violence, extreme violence, gunshots. It contained evidence of Nicola Fuller, the deceased wife, phoning the emergency services. And that tape was played as she was dying, and that tape was played to the jury. And what happened at the end of the case was that the jury retired to a hotel. They had a nice dinner, they had a good few drinks, apparently, and they decided, instead of relying on the evidence, to rely on a Ouija board to try and make contact with the deceased Harry Fuller.
Oh my God. It's about Harry Fuller.
Who killed you?
It's him. Stephen Young.
What should we do now?
That's enough. I don't want to do this anymore. Nor do I. We must stop now. We mustn't tell anyone about this, not anyone.
The following day, the jury returned with a guilty verdict in respect of both allegations. That's to say, the murder of Harry Fuller and the murder of Nicola Fuller. And the verdict was one of guilty against the defendant, Stephen Young. Some days after the trial, it came to light that one of the members of the jury in this case had gone to see a solicitor to make a statement because he was concerned about the activities of some of his co-jurors. That obviously alerted our suspicions, and we were told in brief terms, via hearsay really, what had happened. Their behaviour was clearly out of order and outrageous. They're not supposed to tamper with external factors, particularly issues such as Ouija boards. What I think concerned us for the defence, and apparently the juror who spilled the beans, was that it was quite apparent from the evidence that Harry Fuller was either illiterate or dyslexic or both in life, and therefore how could he spell the words correctly when it came to setting them out on the Ouija board. The Court of Appeal set aside the conviction but ordered a retrial.
The final verdict was also guilty.
I don't think for 1 minute the jurors contacted Harry Fuller. Instead, I think one of them may have been very keen to persuade the others to return a certain verdict and simply push the glass, or they all had a verdict in mind and unconsciously just returned that verdict via the Ouija board. Either way, I think the message came from someone on Earth and not the spirit of Mr. Fuller.
But what really does make the glass move? There are many theories.
It's mental energy, I'm fairly certain of that, from the people sitting there with the group. But that energy can be affected by evil. 9 times out of 10, you'll be safe. Nothing will happen to you. You don't know when the 10th time is going to be, and that is when it becomes dangerous.
The evidence is stacked up from the files of counsellors, carers, doctors, social workers who've had to pick up the pieces. Whatever you think it is, it's bad news, and it should be avoided. I would say, don't.
The subject of the Ouija board is still a controversial one in the UK. Although Parker Brothers sell them in America, none of the big games manufacturers sells Ouija boards in this country. We asked the Toy Manufacturers Association why this was, but they said the issue was too sensitive for them to comment. Good night.